good afternoon, good evening, or good morning, whenever you're watching this. But my name is Jan-Luc Blackburn. I am the co-chair of Team Houston. And this is another webinar in our series of webinars where we try to shed light on the world of soccer and what soccer can mean for the business community, particularly here in the larger metro area of Houston. The beauty of webinar is that we can bring international expertise to the table, and I'm very happy to have two fellow countrymen here in the webinar with me. People like me that are from the Netherlands but already have long experience here in the United States, particularly with sports and particularly with soccer. So we're going to go talk about that, and I want to maybe start with first some introductions. So we have here with me Bob Heren and Maurice Ouderland. So gentlemen, welcome. Thank you for joining today, and thank you for taking the time to share some great insights on sport and soccer. And I would love to invite you to maybe introduce yourselves, and if we can start with you, Bob, and then follow it with Maurice. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. JL, thanks for having me, and thanks for having Maurice. And we're excited to be here and talk about our favorite passion, right? Soccer, the most important, unimportant thing in the world. So my name is Bob here. I'm the program director of the Sport Entertainment Management MBA programs at the University of North Texas. We have an online program for working executives, and we have a traditional face-to-face cohort degree for students who are still trying to make their way into the industry. Both programs are ranked in the top 25 in the world, and our online MBA program for the working executives is the #1 in the world. So very proud of that. A lot of that has to do with the fact that we're in Texas, part of the DFW Metroplex, the #1 sports market in the United States. We have a formal partnership with the Dallas Cowboys, with the PGA of America. We work very closely with every sport entity in DFW, and that really helped us get on the map, find great jobs for our students. Over more recent years, we've become involved more internationally. As you mentioned, I'm originally from the Netherlands. I helped a group of Dallas-based businessmen buy into a Dutch professional soccer team that reactivated my Dutch network, and built a relationship with the consulate in Miami with Maurice and his team, running that STIP program that we're going to talk a little bit more about later on. But that also led to one other thing. So I'm now also the executive director of the UNT Sports Innovation Space, which is going to be launched on May 1st, and where we bring in international sport tech companies who are looking for a soft landing in the United States. We give them professional development, networking opportunities, and a shared workspace.
Fantastic. And I've seen some pictures of that space, and it looks very, very flashy, very sporty, and so exciting that you have conquered that important milestone. So, Maurice, please go ahead.
Yes, well, happy to be here. Thanks for the invite. Currently based in Miami, I'm working for the Dutch Embassy in Washington as the program director for World Cup, for all other initiatives that the consulates and the diplomatic network is doing here, plus sports diplomacy, which is another big thing we're focusing on. Previously, I worked in the Netherlands for the KNVB, the federation, and for companies like Heineken and Samsung and Motorola and so on and so on. In my current job, I'm connecting companies from the Netherlands in sports or related to sports that want to be adventurous and come to the US and start something here. So I listen to them, I ask them questions, and I also try to prepare them before they come here. And out of that grew the program Bob already mentioned, STIP US, which we'll go into a little bit later.
And I understand you are then also on behalf of the Dutch government, I mean, basically Mr. World Cup, right? I mean, you are connecting with the host cities, etc. Is that a safe statement to make?
If you can make it, then yes. You want to hear it from me, but yeah, no, we're trying to sit down with the host committees or the cities or anybody involved in World Cup to see how things are going, if we can be of assistance, if we can be of help, or maybe give some advice along the way.
Okay, and I think we'll come back to that topic a little bit later on. So first, let's talk about the big picture, right? I mean, so soccer is absolutely on the rise in the United States. The World Cup is going to give that another boost. We have already a number of big tournaments this year. But for those who we target, right? I mean, with our efforts, we're targeting the business community. So we're trying to educate them on what is coming, right? And so we are going to get, of course, a lot of European teams, Latin America teams. And the idea of this webinar is to basically make a contrast and compare between Europe and the USA. And so maybe we start there with you, Bob. I mean, you're obviously, I mean, teaching anything, all the things around sports and sports management. So can you give a perspective on how, let's say, the structure of soccer is different between the United States and Europe, and then maybe as an example, the Netherlands?
Yeah, it's truly two different worlds, right? So, and it really starts with the role of the federation. So, where in Europe, the federations are almost monopolists. They control, organize, regulate all levels of sport, from the highest pro leagues to, the under 8, girls team in the middle of nowhere. It's all part of the same federation. So what you have then within Europe are these pyramids where they all are part of the same entity, and it leads to a lot of mobility and a lot of great competitions. Here in the United States, that's completely different because the U.S. Soccer Federation really doesn't control the sports. They regulate it, but it's much more fragmented, right? So the high schools, the interscholastics have their own system. Collegiate sports has their own system. You have youth academies. You have different leagues at all levels, from local recreational to the highest levels. And don't ask me for all the brand names because that keeps changing. And there's just a multiple of everything. And at the highest level, you have a Division 1 Major League Soccer, you have a Division 2 USL, and USL is active on different leagues. USL now said they want to create a Division 1 league, but they're competing. There's no promotion relegation between them. And so some of the differences that causes is that here in America, it has created kind of like a commercial system that even at the lowest levels, you can pay thousands of dollars to have your kid play. Whereas within the federation in Europe, almost all of it is voluntary, nonprofit driven, which makes it very accessible for kids to play.
Yeah, can you explain a little bit that relegation promotion thing? Because those will get words that get thrown around pretty quick, right? And I would imagine if you're not familiar with what that is, can you briefly explain that and what's there, the difference between Europe and in the United States?
Yeah, it's quite simple, right? So you don't buy into a league. There's no fee associated to it. You become part of a league based on your performance. And every year, the worst 2, 3, 4 teams, depending on where you are, right? There's not one set structure. It depends. But the worst teams every year relegate to a lower level, and the best teams get promoted to the higher level. And that's not a commercial decision. That's really based on performance. And in the US, you don't have that because you really buy a fee to become part of it. And so the downside to America is there's very little mobility between the leagues. The advantage of it is that there's much more competitive balance within the league.
And so, on that note, then, right? I mean, so you mentioned something on, let's say, the youth side of it, right? And how things are, let's say, a little bit less expensive. So to you, Maurice, it's like you have worked for the KNVB, right? I mean, you've seen also soccer from many sides. So can you speak to, let's say, the youth side and the recreational side, how that is different and what it does for, let's say, ultimately the talent creation and the sport in general?
Well, to me, the biggest difference is the access to the sport. Um, when I grew up as a 7-year-old, I had access to 13 clubs around me, and I come from a small town, which makes makes the access number a lot, but it's also, like we already discussed, cheap in costs. It doesn't cost much to play soccer. Soccer has always been the poor man's game. All you need is a ball. So when the KNVB or the KNVB is organizing 30,000 games every weekend, um, on pitches that are, held up by local government, uh, you can see that the number of people participating are so much bigger. And I think it's because if I speak for the Netherlands, the ROI of soccer in the Netherlands is just different. For us, it's, yes, there's an economic part of things, but it's mainly development. It's development of health. It's development of self-awareness, mental awareness, have fun. And at a later stage, the other ROI comes in. This is the ROI for the country. And the other ROI is, okay, club teams might say, hey, that's a good player. I want her or him on my team, on my club. I'm going to invest in that person. Not so much in money, but in facility, in coaching, and stuff like that. So there's from the participant no money involved until then, except for what we call a contribution of, what is it, 100, 200 a year. And even if you can't make that amount of money, then there's a subsidization system which can help. So I have to say the biggest word for difference is access.
Okay. Okay. And so, I mean, soccer is happening on a lot of layers, right? I mean, in my sense, is a lot more recreational soccer. But if we take the non-recreational part, I mean, part of why we're doing the Team Houston effort is also for people to know um, why they should, as a business, engage with soccer, right? And so you have worked both at, let's say, the federation, but also at businesses, and have seen soccer from many sides. So can you talk to that part a little bit? Because we're trying to sort of like educate people on that aspect. And so how are businesses in Europe, and then again the Netherlands, at a different level of soccer involved? What can they do? What are the opportunities that people should think about?
Okay, well, so the youth level I was just talking about, the grassroots level, that's your local community helping out with balls, shirts, stuff like that, just shirt sponsoring. That's nothing big yet. But then you have professional teams, and that's a whole different level. That's where the big money comes in. And also the club teams themselves are actually companies, because in the Netherlands, because there's so much access, we have an enormous talent pool, which is our business model. Our business model is to create talents into professional players and then sell them to other teams and thereby make money, so you have an existence as a team. So that says how our league exists. And of course, teams like Ajax, Feyenoord, PSV, they're sponsored by big companies. And so the economics of soccer in the Netherlands is like totally different as in the US. It's mainly based from grassroots, fun level to professional level, and that's how we exist. And the difference is also, because of that, our pool of talent is maximized, it's optimized compared to the pay to play model that the US has, where when you're 15, you need to pay money to get to the next level. And that's not just little money, that's big money. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it also means you miss out on a lot of people that don't have that money. So the pool of people that you're fishing in is a lot smaller. So I don't know if that fully answers your question. It's more an extension of what I said before, but the business model is just different. Soccer is a big industry in the Netherlands, in Europe, but it's a different industry than in the US.
And then, so tapping into that, right? I mean, so taking it back to Bob, right? I mean, you're the business sort of like a university expert there. If you compare, let's say, so the business potential and in general, right? I mean, so in Europe, it's the number one sport. Um, how do you see, let's say, the sport here in relation to the other sports, right? Because there's fierce competition. Is soccer on the rise? Is soccer on the way of becoming one of the dominant sports? And is that another reason why businesses, small and large, should pay attention?
Yeah, there's two layers, right? So I would like to modify Maurice's response slightly or elaborate at least on it because the soccer industry in the United States is it's huge already. It's not becoming huge. It is huge already. And particularly when you look at the participation level, the youth sports, right? So in the Netherlands, indeed, Maurice is completely right. There's no money in youth sports in the Netherlands. So if you are, let's say, a sport tech company, an analytics company, or a wearable company, you can sell to 34 professional soccer teams, and that's it. That's your market. Here in the United States, because of the money, the pay-to-play system, there's a lot of opportunities for businesses to sell their products and services at all levels. And so a company, for instance, a Dutch company called Sports, who does analytics, in the Netherlands, they pretty much have, the league and the teams and that's it. There's not an amateur or youth sport team that can buy their product because they don't have the money. Here in the United States, where they're now active, they can sell to 1,000 universities, colleges, community colleges, and to 10,000, soccer academies. So there is a huge market at that level. Now, where Maurice is 100% right is that at the fan engagement part, right, that part, the US of the Europe is really dominant in that sense. And in the United States, they are arguably the fourth, fifth most popular sport in the United States when it comes to engagement of fan. And that engagement is very fragmented. So only a particular niche of soccer fans really focus on MLS. So you can see that the MLS has a really increasing number of attendees. Right? The stadiums are full. I mean, Atlanta United sells out the football stadium, which is incredible. But when it comes to the ratings, and even though Apple doesn't want to share their ratings, we know that those ratings are not very high. And in fact, the ratings for Saturday morning Premier League games is higher than for the MLS. Um, if you look at some of the hallmark events, the last Euro final, the World Cup final, it already exceeds any rating of any sport event in the United States except for the NFL and some of the college football playoff games. It exceeds the NBA final rating. It exceeds the NHL final, MLB finals, World Series. So it's already there, but it is more fragmented. So, and then looking at your question, then is it growing? Absolutely. With the World Cup, everybody expects the next jump. Now, nobody expects a jump to be as big as in 1994 or after 1994, but people still expect a further increase. And that's supported by looking at the fan based demographics. So, of all the professional leagues, soccer has the youngest fan base in the United States. And so, I think golf is the oldest, baseball is also somewhere there, high 50s, low 50s maybe. Below there, then you have hockey and football. Basketball is among the youngest, but there's definitely a gap then to the average age of the soccer fans. So you see that the youth are less and less likely to abandon their childhood sport, which used to be the case. They would abandon soccer by the age of 12. They now remain engaged in the games of sports through playing FIFA video games and watching international soccer. So it's here, it's big, and it's only going to get bigger.
And then a little follow-on question to that. Any big differences between women's soccer and men's soccer? Again, Europe versus the US?
Well, historically, of course, the women's U.S. women's national soccer team is the best of class, right? So, the U.S. has been leading in developing the women's game. The Europeans are catching up real quickly now, though, right? So I think that as we move forward, we'll see a much better balance there, and I think that the dominance will end. They will still remain one of the best teams, right? Simply by size and history. Um, but they took the lead. Now, vice versa, the men's game is let's say the problem child in the United States because they are still not competitive enough to really compete with the best nations. And American sports fans are simply used to that, right? They don't accept a mediocre team. They don't accept to be like, not best of class. And so as long as the men's team can't really regularly compete for quarterfinal, semifinal games, let's say it that way, right? I have a real hope that they can win the tournament. It will never make that last jump, right? They need to find success in the men's game if they really truly want to become a dominant soccer power and make it one of the most popular sports.
Okay. So talking about the men's game, we're going to have a lot of men's games, right, already this year, right? I mean, we're going to have the Gold Cup, we're going to have the Club World Cup, and then we're going to have the big one next year. So Maurice, I mean, we as Dutchies, right? We have seen a few tournaments, and so in your role, you see things from even closer by. So for cities and for businesses in these host cities, and then in this case, we're targeting the Houston audience. What are some of the things that you would point out that people need to be ready for, that they either might not be aware of or maybe underestimate or overestimate? So, speak to that a little bit from your perspective and experience.
Yeah, well, this is, and you were there when we were in Houston and we were speaking about this. Um, don't underestimate the beast that's gonna walk in soon. It might be confusing because we went very quickly. Have Gold Cup, a World Cup for club teams, and then there's World Cup for country teams. That's a lot. Well, let's focus on World Cup only, and that's in 2026. That's 104 games because it's the biggest ever. It's going to be played in the US, Canada, and Mexico, but 104 games. That means there's 104 Super Bowls heading your way. And if you look at it per city, let's say Houston, I think, has 7, Dallas has 9. So 7 games means people flying in on day 1, then there's the game on day 2, and flying out on day 3. If these are single games, sometimes they're in the group phase. It might be that you have 2 games in one city. So that's 7 times 3. That's 21 Super Bowls that you have to prepare for. And you can see that some are on top of things that I've spoken to, and it's impressive. And others are like, yeah, we can do this. We had a Super Bowl here. We can do this. I believe in the U.S. system of we can do this. So in the end, it will be all right. But to take advantage of all the opportunities coming in your city, you should prepare now, because these are people that are coming from other countries that might never. If I take Houston for example again, that might not ever want to go to Houston normally or don't even know about it. Not that it's a small town, but it's not their mindset. If I go to the US, I go to New York or maybe Miami or LA, and that's about it. This is the opportunity for the city to show who you are, what you're for, your pride, and yeah, you have to prepare for that now. So that's the cultural exchange, But for the rest, you're going to have a legacy. I mean, there's going to be a lot of money invested in making the city ready for all those people. Some projects that might have been on the back burner for a while are going to be picked up. But what is your legacy? What you want to do? In Atlanta, for example, they're building extra bike paths. I know because the Dutch and biking, that's sort of a synonym. Because that's the legacy they want to do. When World Cup is gone, that bike path will still be there. It's there because of World Cup. And I think every city has stuff like that. And then on top, you have to be prepared. You have to be ready. I mean, the stadiums are ready. Most of them have grass uh, ready. And I mean, they all have to have grass. FIFA has very strict rules for that. We have great Dutch grass masters, some of them involved, and that's good because, yeah, not every stadium has grass. But there's also stuff around the stadium. So if I look from a Dutch perspective, I always say three things. We have solutions for on the pitch, so that means athlete performance kind of stuff. We have it in the stadium, so that's stadium operations, like I said, grass or the way you enter the stadium or the way you order your drink. And then you have around the stadium. Community is one thing, but another thing is how do I get to the stadium? Do people that are new to your city, do they know how to get to the stadium? And if that's 60,000 people, how you make sure that they're there on time? And in some cities, that's easier because they have public transport, or like we did in the Netherlands, you can go the last mile, you can go walk, and towards the walking, you can even go by bike. So Atlanta is a good example. Philly could be a good example. But in Houston, that might be completely different. So participate on a large crowd that are curious about your city, that might not show up normally, but are there, and take full advantage of it, besides the jerseys and everything, because people are gonna, if it's the Dutch, we're gonna wear orange. I know Houston wears orange. So hey, if you still have some shirts there, make some extra and sell them to the Dutch if they ever come to your city, because we don't know yet. And that's another thing, we don't know yet. December 5th, I believe it is, they will do the drawings. We're still qualifying, all of us. And that's when the real opportunities come along, because then you know which or which country teams will come to your city, and after that as well. But just invest in your city and know that for 30 days it will be crazy in a positive way.
Dale, I'm going to chime in one real quickly here because I love Maurice's response, but there's a analogy there that doesn't make sense, and people make a mistake here. And it's not Maurice. I know what he's trying to say, but the term it's going to be 21 Super Bowls. The analogy with the Super Bowl is completely flawed, and it's a mistake that people make because yes, in size, it's going to be as big as Super Bowl. But it's not a Super Bowl, right? So in Maurice's city of Miami last year, the America Cup, they had riots at the Miami at the Hard Rock Stadium because they didn't realize that these fans behave completely different, and they were not able to handle them. And the example that Maurice gave with grass, it's not a good example. The grass at the Copa America was terrible, absolutely terrible. Players are going to get injured and it's going to look terrible upon the United States. And that's because we're putting it in football stadiums where there's turf laying now, and they underestimate the quality of grass that's needed to have a World Cup game. And that's what happened. And so if the Copa America was a litmus test of is America ready? Absolutely not. They are not ready. They don't understand the fans, how they're going to behave, what they need, and how you can actually safely organize an event at a football stadium.
So, and that's why I love the my Dutch friends here, right? Always honest and straightforward with some of these comments, and so very interesting points, right? I mean, so clearly, we are in circles where we have access to all kind of parties that could potentially help in many of those areas. So, for any of the listeners, feel free to reach out to any of us, right? If you're looking for help, but let's talk a little bit about the fans, right? Because also the fan experience. So I maybe pick then on your comment, Bob, right? I mean, so if it's not a Super Bowl, right? How about the tailgating, and how about the fan experience, and how about the fan engagement? So what do we need to prepare for in terms of like these 47 countries that are coming? How different is the fan experience? How different is the fan expectation? What should we as people in cities that are going to get all these guests be ready for, right? And the beast, as Maurice called it.
Yeah, it's a different type of fan, right? And the American fans, sport fans, let me just say that up front. And as a dual citizen and fellow American, the American sport fans are the best fans in the world. They're awesome. They don't require a lot of security. I mean, yes, there are occasional fights, and yes, there's drunkenness, and there's some things, but generally, it's a very safe family experience. Soccer generally is not. Now, national team soccer is better than club soccer. right? There is more family element, more party element, but there's still a much younger male fan base who will do all kinds of stuff they're not supposed to do, and then they go to the game, right? They see it as a party, and that can get out of hand. So to kind of like organize the game experience around that, it requires more security, different kind of security. It requires a different pre-game experience. It requires different promotions, different, all these things are going to be different. The World Cup now has a long-standing tradition of fan zones, right? Concept well known in America as well. These fan zones are great, and you can plan around that. That's kind of like an organized, more structured tailgate experience. And then you can, facilitate traffic between the fan zones and the stadium. But it requires more attention, right? So understanding the teams, understanding the nations, understanding their fans. England has terrible, I'm sorry to say this for any English people listening to this, England has terrible team fans. They can be much more problematic than the Dutch, which are, they treat it as Mardi Gras, right? They're just partying and all wearing that stupid annoying orange color, right? And but it's a great party, right? So, you don't understand your fan base. The Irish fans are great, the English fans are not. The Italian fans are mostly absent, whereas, the Brazilian fans are a party. Every nation has a unique fan base that you have to understand. So the moment you know your teams, your games on December 5th, as Maurice was saying, you want to start researching, you want to work with soccer fans, experts, people like me, in combination with anthropologists, maybe, to understand how, what needs do they have. And so that's really focused on the fans. Now, on a business side, it's a different story altogether. So I don't know if you want me to go into that, but that's kind of a different.
Talk to that for a moment, because then we get from there to Maurice to the STIP program. So talk about the business side, right? I mean, and from fan to business, and maybe fan business to innovation.
Yeah, I would say for any corporation that's listening to it, they have to understand that this is already the biggest event for their international counterparts. The international counterparts are already planning for the World Cup, are already thinking about it, are already mapping out their US strategies, are already doing their activations, planning, deciding on the activations now. Right? Whereas for most American organizations, the World Cup is far away, right? It's like a year and a half away. We're not worried about that. International companies, it's right here, right now. They're making decisions now. So these conversations on how to leverage the World Cup to have, meaningful new business development, they need to take place now. This is when you want to start planning events where you bring in these nations. And I know that's hard because people are probably staring a little bit too much about what nation will be in their city. I think that there's a lot you can do with the World Cup overall, and particularly with big, large international companies that have locations all over the world. You can have these engagements and these activations now.
Yeah. And so then talking about business, right? Business also means not only planning, but also innovation. That's where your joint program comes in. So we're partnering up in May between Team Houston and Divink here in Houston and you guys. So speak to the program of STIP USA, Maurice. What's behind it? What's the origin, and what are you trying to accomplish?
Okay, so well, like I said, my job is to get Dutch companies that are interested in the US, get them here safe. And safe means ready to rock and roll. And there's cultural differences between our two countries. There's sports differences between our two countries. And what I notice is we're very opportunistic as a culture. Yes, we'll do this. We can do it. We'll do it. But it takes preparation. This is the US. There's a lot of money to be made. I mean, the total industry is, I think, 2.6 trillion, the sports business market, and one third is in the US. So no matter what number I'm saying, I think I have the right number, but one third is happening here. So yes, the market is very big and therefore very attractive, also for Dutch companies. But is it vice versa? Are the Dutch companies attractive for the US market? And I was surprised when I started. I was surprised that we have some really, really good solutions for problems and challenges in the US, some of them not even known yet. And that's the funny thing. But is the company ready for that as well? And that's where the program comes in. So before we bring companies here and introduce them to our network here and say, hey, this is a great company to have a solution for fan engagement or a solution for water or for grass or whatever it is, athlete performance, we have it all. And I'm really amazed about the quality and the nitty gritty that we have. But on the other hand, you have to be ready as a company, and that's a totally different ball game. So Bob and I were sort of talking about that, and then we said we should make a program for that. So the program is STIP US, means Sports Tech Innovation Bridge to the US. It's 6 free workshops for companies in the Netherlands that are in sports tech, or related. Could be infrastructure even. We're going to see that with the World Cup. So you get 6 workshops about cultural differences, sports differences, or inspirational from people in the US, explaining things to the Dutchies. After that, we'll have a pitch competition, which is held at the Federation. And the top 5 in the end, we're going to bring to the US. And that's what's going to happen in May when we visit Dallas, Houston, and Mexico City, all 3 host cities of the World Cup.
And then for that program, so you're bringing these companies to the different cities, right? I mean, obviously 3 wonderful cities from just a city point of view, but also, let's say, playing a big role in the World Cup. So, and then the idea is to have these companies also engage, let's say, with the key sports entities and the business community here local, right?
Yeah, I left that little bridge to Bob, who's involved in the Dallas part, and you are involved in the Houston part. So I'll bridge to Bob here that can explain more and what we offer those companies that are actually coming here.
Yeah, because ultimately the goal is, of course, to get these 5 companies in front of our local network, right? So what you're going to do in Houston and I'm going to do here in Dallas, we had our first one last year. We named the event where we were looking for that interaction, the World Cup Innovation Summit. Knowing that if I would call the Dutch Sport Tech House, I might get 5 executives showing up, but I called it the World Cup Innovation Summit. We had then the owner of FC Dallas and a panel together with Todd Martin, the GM of AT&T Stadium, and Monica Paul, who's been leading the World Cup bid here. So we had a great panel that brought in a lot of people. We had about 75, 80 sports executives show up, listening to the pitches that were sprinkled into these different panels, mainly then that main panel. And so that was very successful. I think 4 out of the 5 companies had a deal out of it, or at least very meaningful conversations that might still lead to a deal. And so this year we're actually doing that same thing, World Cup Innovation Summit, with the difference that now we're partnering with Plug and Play, Plug and Play Sports Tech, which is based here in Frisco. They started earlier this year. Plug and Play is the world's largest VC accelerator company in terms of volume of deals, not in capital committed, but volumes of deals. And so they're combining their expo day with our kind of event, and then we're gonna build out the content a lot more than what we did last year. And the U.S. Soccer Federation is now part of this. We're gonna do a hackathon for students where they're gonna kind of work with U.S. soccer data around the national team. And so we're going to do all kinds of fun stuff. But really, the purpose is to get these Dutch companies in front of as many people that we can get. Let's make sure they get a deal, right? It might not be realistic for all 5, but I think that for me at least, and I think Maurice agrees with that, the success of the program is measured by the conversations we can get for them one-on-one and the number of deals that ultimately lead from those.
And of course, I'm somewhat intimate familiar with the program that we're going to do in Houston, right? Which will very much be a replica of that. And then here we're also partnering with Divink, and likely all the activities are going to happen in the Ion. And who knows, we managed to get some stadium visits as well. Just one more question on this program, Maurice, because it's not just those 5 companies, right? I mean, it's a little bit of a delegation, so there's going to be also some interesting stakeholders with some soccer experience that are going to be part of that delegation as well, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Because this year, well, last year we did Miami and Dallas, and we decided, okay, that's great. We do this for 5 companies, and great experience, but a lot of work to do that. Why don't we expose the people that we invite to more Dutch treats, as I say, some other STIP US contestants, but also people from outside. It's just not every company in the Netherlands is a SME or a startup. We have large companies in the Netherlands too interested in particularly this part of the US that they don't come very often, as I said earlier, and they're going to join us. So I expect, besides the 5 winners and people from the organizational block, which is myself, of course, but there's the federation, there's Sport Innovator, there's RVO, the people that invest in Dutch companies coming here from government point of view. We have ROM Utrecht. So that's already 10 people, and then I expect at least another 10 companies to fly in with us to discover this part of the world and the opportunities that they have.
Very exciting. And I know we put a little pressure on you to have some of the representatives of some of the key teams present as well, right? So that would be great. Well,
Let me add one thing to it, right, JL, because I know your audience will probably be, I'm assuming the listeners are a lot of Houston-based organization. We've talked about both Dallas and Houston in this, and Maurice basically mentioned that, like it's an overlooked part. I think that still Texas is much bigger domestically than it is internationally, right? As a brand, everybody in the United States understands Texas is where the growth is, where the economy growth is, population growth is. It's where it's happening, right? There's a lot of attention. There's a lot of migration, net positive from both coastlines to Texas. Internationally, that is not well known. And so when I engage with these international sport tech companies, and I'm basically trying to recruit them to Dallas, what comes forward is that they're looking at New York, they're looking at Boston, they're looking at Miami, they're looking at San Francisco, they're looking at LA. They're looking at either the West Coast or the East Coast. They don't consider Texas. We're not on the radar. And so what we're trying to do with these programs as well is making sure it's not just Dallas. Dallas is an amazing city. I'm very proud of it. And I could spend an entire hour with you, JL, arguing why Dallas is better. But it's really not the point. So what I try to tell in my conversations is like, no, I'm not selling Dallas. I'm selling Texas. I'm selling Dallas, Fort Worth. I'm selling Houston. I'm selling Austin, right? And San Antonio. It's that triangle there in East Texas, which a combined population of 25 million people, which I think is always the best selling point to these international companies. And so the mistake we make sometimes, we start becoming competitive, and we have this many games, you have that many games. That's really not relevant. It's really making sure that we position ourselves and brand ourselves as a collaborative set of cities here that can provide a lot of benefits to everybody outside the state.
Yep. No, and you and I talked several times about that. I mean, we're on the same page there, right? I mean, so Texas can use for sure some more positive PR, and hopefully these kind of programs can contribute to that. So maybe from your end, Maurice, some last closing words, because I think Bob has given sort of like the pitch on Texas. So what is your final closing remark on, let's say, soccer, the US, Europe, innovation, and potential?
It's actually the same what I say to the companies about Texas. So not to echo Bob too much, but I always say if you have an app, if that's your product, and you would make it an app with Texan elements, you would be fine. Because if that's your market, you'll be fine. You don't need another market because it's that big. And they have no clue. I mean, that's up to us too, to teach people about the opportunities of Texas. And I see the same as a metaphor for soccer in the US and the opportunities that every host city is going to have. This is your chance to be that next city for companies, in this case Dutch companies, but for international organizations coming in, people coming in, discovering your country, because I'm talking about the US, but it's also for Mexico and it's also for Canada. Soccer unites. It's one big fest. I agree. Some soccer fans are totally different than from the football fans that we know here. But overall, it's one big fest, and use it to your advantage. Even if you don't sell anything, but at the end, people are like, "Wow, Houston, I have to go back," or Seattle, I have to go back because this is a great city. This is your window shop, that you're opening up to the world, and go for it. I mean, uh, World Cup is such an amazing event in it on its own, and if you can do that in this country, yeah, it's going to be amazing. So it's going to be good for soccer. It's going to be good for the U.S. I know I sound like a president right now, but it is. It's going to be great. Yeah, no, but it is going to be great.
Wonderful. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. I mean, it was great to get this perspective. We're going to see both of you live in several places in Texas, I think between the moment of this recording and the live and also the events in May. And for the people who are watching this, so this is part of our activities as Team Houston. We are trying to get the business and creative communities ready for not only the World Cup, but for soccer in general. And that's why we try to do these kind of things. You're going to see more of these kind of webinars where we try to bring experts like Bob and Maurice, but in other fields. We'll probably have one in Spanish soon talking about Latin America soccer. That's going to be a fun one. We'll probably cover the topics of technology and likely also the female side of things. So we want to bring that expertise to you as a business community so that you are inspired, that you are informed, and that you can start making your plans. And I would recommend don't wait with making your plans until the final drawing happens. Make your plans ahead of time. And in order to help you with that process, we're doing a lot of activities. So you can go to our website, team-houston.com, the event section, and there you'll see we'll do several things. We are doing webinars. We are doing also watch parties. So we'll do some events in pubs where we watch whether or not it's Liverpool, Champions League, Euro qualifiers, or Houston Dynamo games, or She Believes Cups, which we did recently. But we'll also do events in the stadium. So we have worked out something with Houston Dynamo. So to support Houston Dynamo, our local team, we have networking events at the stadium. So that's what we call our watch events. We get early access, we get discounted tickets, and we have some opportunity to network because we believe that's also important. People need to network with each other in order to probably discover opportunities. And then we have our in-person events. So those are, let's say, our flagship events. Our next one is going to be on the 27th of March. That's going to be in Green Street, downtown. It's part of the Houston Roundup. So we're very proud to be part of that program. We're doing the Thursday evening plan, and that one will be very special. We're organizing workshops so you can work together with your counterparts on some topics around soccer, which hopefully gets the creative juices going, the collaborative juices going. And then in April, we have a special one. We will be at Toros HTX, where there is actually soccer fields. So we are going to talk there about youth soccer, recreational soccer with local experts about that topic. And there's a lot happening in that space also here in Houston. I think you're going to be nicely surprised what is happening there and what the opportunities are. We'll probably invite some of you to play soccer at the end. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And then in May, we will be in Houston with the delegation from the Netherlands on the 21st and the 22nd. There is a whole 21st and 22nd program, but the intersection with the team program is going to be on the Thursday afternoon, and that will happen in the ION. And so all the information on our website, you can register for all these activities. Please register so we can plan capacity. We expect big crowds because, again, this is the biggest event or the biggest sport on planet Earth, and it's coming to a city near you. So that's what we have for today. Once again, Bob and Maurice, thank you very much for joining us here on this webinar, and thank you, and see you soon, and talk to you soon, and go Team Houston. Thank you.
Thanks, Joel. Appreciate you hosting us.
Thank you.
Thank you.